Hey there, Perennial Pride listeners. Thanks for joining me on this episode. So, this week's been an interesting set of events. There's a lot still swarming around our economy at the time of this recording, and certainly there's fear of an impending economic recession and bank failures and all these things. And so, really, just like anything else, the news can be overwhelming of negativity and confusion, and so it becomes difficult to sometimes think about the long term because you're just worried kind of what's going to happen today. And it sort of struck me to think about the future and thinking long term when we're in these sorts of situations. And I think about delayed gratification on things like in our lives, the way we live today. Everything is instantaneous. We want Amazon Prime. There was a comedian, I forgot his name, but he talks about Amazon Prime. We want it now. We want it now. We want it yesterday. We want them to know that we want to order it, so it arrives before we even think about it. Like we're just living in that world of instant gratification instead of delayed gratification. And we want everything now, and we're not patient for it. We're not going to potentially work for it, right? We want the faster, more instantaneous result. And there's nothing wrong with trying to be more efficient in what you do, but there's a lot of things to get some of these big rewards in life or in our health or whatever. They sometimes take some time and patience. And it's just not really emphasized these days because we have access to so much information and news and media, and our phones can do 100 different things, and we just live in an interesting time. But I always think about, as I'm thinking about life in general, that the saying is true. I found it myself that you overestimate what you can get done in say a year, but you underestimate what you can get done in 5, because we're just so wired now to strive for immediate results. And I remember this too, certainly being in the corporate world, that being a public company, there's so much emphasis on the quarterly results and what's going on now, even though stock valuations are supposed to be based on long-term results, right? Or projections of where this company is going and what the value of it is today, right? But there's still so much emphasis on short-term sort of news and information. We can't wait for the Fed to tell us what's coming next so we can adjust what's happening in the markets. And it requires us to kind of really focus on the short term. But it can cause us to make some mistakes, especially long-term mistakes, right? That could impact us. So, today I wanted to, for our own personal investments, this is kind of what I want to share, some just nuggets and things for you to think about, because as we get so fixated on short-term, long-term really matters if we hope to be on this earth for a while. And the one that always reminds me of this back in the day is the marshmallow challenge. If you recall this, and I forgot where it was done, but really it was testing little kids, right? You give you one marshmallow, and if you wait for 5 minutes, I'll give you another marshmallow. You can double it, right? You could essentially double your money. And if you just wait a little bit, and you watch these kids and they're kind of nipping at it and they're kind of smelling it. They're growing impatient, really fun to watch, humorous to watch. And some couldn't wait. Like, I got to have it. I'm going to eat it. Get out of my way. Versus some it was difficult, but they got there. They were able to wait, and they got their second marshmallow, and then got to enjoy the fruits of their discipline and laboring through it. And so, but they watched these kids as they grew and developed over time. They had better test scores. They were more successful in life. They had all these success factors that, for the people that couldn't wait and couldn't have the discipline to delay gratification, they didn't have it. So they were always, so it was fascinating to see, even in that little experiment, that, that would stay with people for time, right? As they grew up in their adulthood and live life. So it's quite amazing. And I reflect back when I grew up, I was spent a bunch of years in Atlantic City. My parents used to visit there often. We were living in Jersey at the time, and my brother and I would be parked in some Boardwalk Arcade, and our parents would give us whatever amount of money to spend as they were in the casinos, and we'd get the whatever amount, say $10 in quarters, and we'd wait and we'd play, and I'd watch my brother at times. I'd play a little bit, and I watched my brother play, and he would go through a lot of those coins very, very quickly. And then we'd have to wait for her mom to. We didn't have cell phones, obviously, at times. We couldn't contact her, and to get more money, and have to, and kind of just sit there bored. Well, I vividly remember cases where I don't know why. I'm like 6, 7 years old, something maybe in that range, maybe a little bit older, but for some reason, I wouldn't spend all my money. I would play a little bit. I kind of meander around, watch other people play. I watch my brother play. I would take a break. Then I'd play a little bit more, and I'd be very judicious in where I played. I wanted to maximize the use of my dollars, and I kept some. And the end of the days, I usually had money left over. And I don't know what instinct that drove me to do those things, but I vividly remember it. And it was just interesting because I think it's really helped me throughout my lifetime to be more mindful and save and think long term about things, and be smart about that, and delay gratification in a lot of ways. So it's just fascinating to see how it's turned out. So, and it's not easy. I'm not saying it is easy. It's just so for folks thinking about, and then, obviously I'm going to talk more about from the financial side of things, but this obviously goes with anything in life, right? Whether your health, right, doing the hard work and delaying the gratification of that dessert, right? And putting in the work, right? That it's going to maybe not show up next quarter, next year, but years from now, right? Things that you're going to do. So from a financial perspective, I think one of the things is getting into the right habits. You hear enough about this. It's hard to break our habits once we get them, if they're good or bad, that they can stay with us, and they're difficult to change once you get into the routine. So really this gets down to trying to make sure that you have the right financial habits in place. And some of them are not difficult, right, on paper, but in reality can be hard to kind of create that habit, like saving consistently, spending less, right? Spending less than you make, right? And putting it aside, and not just spending all your raises or bonuses on something, right? Like the tax return, right? People are spending before they get it, right? So consistently saving, and saving more for time. And the other side of it is making sure you have a good balance between protections and wealth building. We talked about this on prior podcasts around this sort of parallel life we lead for our finances. Is we have the protection side of things, where we're protecting against death, disability, lawsuits, losses, all those sorts of things. And so any one of those hiccups could really damage our ability to grow wealth over time. And then obviously we're trying to build wealth to grow and create income and create assets that we can use down the line, savings. But we need to have that balance, because any of these big protections, I get disabled, I can't work, right? Or I die prematurely, then all the income I would have earned never is generated. So that striking that balance is really important, to take a look at those things and see kind of where you are on those. Are you too heavily weighted, which I often see, too heavily weighted into building wealth and trying to catch up on investments and taking significant risks, but you're a hiccup away from basically the house of cards falling down, right? Because you're not adequately protected in all areas of life. So that's really key to investigate that and see kind of where you are. And a lot of it goes, taking a look at where you're investing. I mean, we talk about finding secure places to store wealth that can grow, that doesn't lose, and you have access to it. And we take a cue from Warren Buffett, is the rules of investing is don't lose, right? That's the big thing, and because losses can be much more impactful than the gain. So finding places, at least for portions of assets, that are going to go one direction, go up, it beats inflation, can be there during times of turmoil, that we can rely on it. Look at what's happened these days, right? Where you used to think that stocks and bonds were, worked in opposite directions, right? They would balance. That's why you have bonds, right? To protect against the volatility of the stock market that's going to happen. Well, look what's happened. They're now more correlated than ever, right? in the past year, they were both down significantly. And so the game has changed quite a bit. So it requires us to think a little bit differently around how we are balancing our financial lives, because things have changed. The policy makers and the Fed and all these monetary policies and fiscal policies that are really impacting the dynamics of our economy really cause us to have to rethink things and look about our prior paradigms that we thought were good. They're shifting, and you need to stay ahead of that curve, right? So, and when we think about, just in general, outside of the habits and sort of the basics, right? Blocking and tackling of our financial lives, just like anything, we need to continue to grow and learn, right? Because things change, things evolve, right? Things that may have not, that used to work, don't work now, right? And so this is where we have to stay invested in our education and continue to grow. We can't stay stagnant. We'll never arrive. These things require us to stay educated and have good advisors around us and experts that have their own sort of perspectives on things that we can learn and use and adopt for our own sort of benefit and thoughts. And so these are really key to continue to constantly learn and grow in the areas of life that are important to you. And that includes like being a parent, right? So this is all part of that, because we've got a lifetime here, and it may seem forever, a long time, but it's frankly, in a lot of cases, not a long time. Years and months and years and decades kind of sometimes fly. And so we got to stay consistent, continue to learn and grow, and be open to learning new things that are going to help us achieve what we're trying to achieve in our lives. One other thing that I think, to kind of combat this a bit, is trying to do hard things. We oftentimes, I guess, in terms of this delayed gratification, we succumb to the easy road. Right. And we're all guilty of this, right? Because we can get lazy in life. We can take our eye off the ball and fall down a bit. And that's going to happen to the best of us. But trying to prevent that from happening as much as possible is key, right? And getting back on the sort of harder road of consistently doing the right things and getting those good habits in place. And sometimes pushing ourselves to do the hard things, right? Because those are the hard things that kind of make us become better. They harden us. They toughen us up to some degree, so we can handle some of the hard things that come in life, whether throughout certainly the financial world. Like, what do you have that really is solid and foundationally strong, so that regardless of how things are happening in our personal or financial lives, that we're going to be okay, right? And it's really facing those things. And I always think about it from the philosophy of stoicism, and that really rings true to me, is trying to take things for what they are and be objective with them, and realize that these challenges that come our way, they are actually the way for us to improve and get better and make us become the best people we can be, right? So those are important things that unfortunately they come with the territory to improve. Like, it's going to be challenging. But that, I guess, is part of the game and really helps us to grow and become all we can be. Now, the big thing, too, I think in our turmoil of life and living daily, we have to live our days and really focus on them, because we're not guaranteed long term, right? That's a fact of life. We are mortal. And so I do appreciate each day more and more, and try to make the most of it. And so we can stay in that area and you win the day, and you're going to win your life, right? Each and every day. But it's also important to remember to think long term. And hopefully we're here for as long as we're allowed to, hopefully well over 100. But then we think in long term from generational, right? What kind of impact we want to have for our kids, our grandkids, and down the line to the industries that we work in and the people we get to interact with, like thinking long term, because some of these things require patience and thinking that far in advance. I mean, a lot of people will just say, hey, I'm just trying to get to age 65 so I can actually start living, right? This magical retirement age, and I can live the life I really want. But is that really the way you want to go, right? Is that fulfilling enough all through life, right? And that's what we all have to ask ourselves. But then thinking long term, what do we want to continue to contribute to? What do we want to impact? And how do we want to live our lives? And those are big questions that require us to reflect and really be honest with ourselves, right? And, there was this phrase I heard months ago in terms of measuring success in our lives. It's how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, right? Forget about all the external crap that you may hear or what success is supposed to mean. And it takes some time for us to really reflect on that, right? And what that means for us long term. And so it's just something that I want you to kind of maybe consider, right? And what do you want your legacy to be? Who do you want to impact? Because it's those people and the people that live beyond us, and what they take is really our legacy, right? You can leave a bunch of money, but what are you leaving into those folks? And that's really a long term way of thinking. And lastly, when we think about our finances and where we're investing, and we can sometimes fall into the prey of autopilot of what is typical and it's comfortable, right? And what they tell us we're supposed to be invested in. And I said, this is where it is personal, right? This is what I call personal finances. And I truly believe that when you're investing in things that you have an interest in, you start learning about it. You feel you believe in it, and it causes you to learn more and hopefully control more of it, that ultimately you're going to win in more cases than not. And it's actually going to reduce your risk, right? We're often taught that these mantras are just simple things that we just hold as gospel and truth all the time. We never really look into them. Like, you have to have high risk for high rewards. Listen, I think there is a need to take risks in certain areas, but for the vast majority of our dollars, right, that we're taking much more calculated risk because we are reducing it, right? Because we know more about the investment. We understand who we're working with. We know the direction things are going, and we're not leaving it up to chance. That, to me, will reduce your risk and give you outsized returns, right? There's going to be cases where we want to take a bet, right, on things like a crypto or a business venture, but, small portions of our wealth, right, that could have really massive returns to them, but that's not where our bulk of our dollars are sitting, right? Because the losses, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, can be really damaging, right? Losses hurt more. And so trying to prevent them is key overall, but it does take a little bit of time and effort to learn these things and not just jump at the shiny object that may be put in front of us. Do the due diligence, learn about it, understand what you're investing in, what your purpose of investing in, and I think you'll be way better off in the long run. So I hope this was helpful to kind of give you some sort of areas that maybe you want to think about in terms of your personal finances and thinking long term, and don't fall prey to instant gratification. Hopefully the game for you in life and your finances is a long one. And I sincerely hope that for everyone who's listening to this, that you get to live the life you truly want. But sometimes it comes with some extra discipline and difficulty of delaying some instant gratification so you can win the long game life and wealth and certainly happiness. So take care, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.